Welcome to the LDA Podcast, a series by the Learning Disabilities Association of America. Our podcast is dedicated to exploring topics of interest to educators, individuals with learning disabilities, parents, and professionals to work towards our goal of creating a more equitable world. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LDA Podcast. I'm here today with Owen Small, a research assistant and an individual with dysgraphia and ADHD. Owen, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So this is to continue our Adulthood Learning Disability series that we've started, and I'm so excited to dive in. But first, I wanted to give the audience a chance to get to know a bit about you. So, Owen, would you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. As you said, I'm a research assistant and a project manager with the 4ES project at Trinity College Dublin. Before that, I was doing my master's at University College Dublin. And then before that, I grew up in America, not too far outside of Philly. Went to school in Central PA, and uh, much thanks to my wife, found myself here in Ireland. Mhm.
So I wanted
Mhm.
to talk about, when did you receive a diagnosis for dysgraphia and ADHD? Were those at the same time? Were those different?
Yeah, so when I was in elementary school, I just kind of received a sort of like unspecified learning disability diagnosis. And then kind of went a long time without kind of any further elaboration on that. But as I got older, kind of got more described as ADHD, and then a little bit later in life, I got kind of told that I have dysgraphia. So which was something to learn, and I guess explains my horrible handwriting for most of my life. So, um, but yeah, so I had known for a while that I had like something, I guess, different in like the learning space than everybody, but I wasn't fully aware of the ADHD, I guess, until I was a teenager, and then dysgraphia until probably a little bit later after that.
Yeah, okay. Well, and it's kind of interesting to go from something so general to something more specific. So what
hmm
did anything change for you as a result of having a more specific diagnosis? Did it impact like your identity? Did it impact how you approached to things? Like what was there a difference for you that you noticed afterwards once you had that knowledge?
I don't know if I can say so for ADHD because I mean I did know, maybe not formally, that like just through like family members and people close to family, like knowing how to identify that, I knew relatively early. And then I guess formally I kind of knew about that for sure when I was a teenager. But with the dysgraphia, I think there was definitely kind of something nice about learning more about that. Um, it sort of made me, I don't know how to put it. I guess just feel better about things in retrospect. Just handwriting was always very, very difficult. I have like lots of memories of just getting very stressed out in classes, having to write out a lot of things by hand, like trying to keep up with taking notes. I was always terrible at taking notes because my notes would just turn into scribbles, and then uh, my words would just become completely misspelled in every possible way, and I have to constantly scratching things out because I always used pen as well. Because on top of ADHD and dysgraphia, I'm also left-handed, which isn't like some disability, but also in a right-handed world, I guess you kind of could say it is. So I didn't use pencil because that smudges forever. So using pen, and then also having terrible handwriting, which not realizing it was because I had an issue with handwriting, just led to lots of frustration and super big blotches on notebooks from scratching things out. So yeah, learning kind of closer to being like an adult about dysgraphia was kind of really nice because like, oh, okay, so I didn't just like suck at writing. There was like a reason for that, and it did kind of make things feel better. And then in my master's, it helped out because then I was able to actually get some accommodations for that because school over here in Europe for graduate school exams are pretty much just handwriting for 2 hours. So being
Yeah,
able to kind of use a keyboard in those circumstances was definitely reducing some stress.
absolutely. No, I'm glad
Mhm.
that was able to help you, that you had more specific knowledge and it was actually able to help you get accommodations later in
hmm
life. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what are some ways that dysgraphia and ADHD can impact you in your day-to-day life? Are there some things that
Hmm.
people might not automatically associate with dysgraphia or ADHD that come up?
Yeah, I'll stick with the dysgraphia for a second, and
Sure.
then touch on the
Yeah,
ADHD.
absolutely.
But I will say the kind of first thing that pops in my mind when you ask that on like day-to-day life is I ask my wife to write cards a lot for me. I get a little bit insecure sometimes about that. I'm thick-skinned enough, I think, and I've dealt with it, so I'm not really offended when people say, "Oh, it looks like a little kid wrote this." But when it like when I left my job before I moved to Ireland, I wrote my supervisor like a card. Well, I didn't write it. Sam, my wife did because I didn't want to. I looked at my first draft of it and I was like, this does look like a little kid wrote it. So I asked her to write it. So just little things like that of just like a lack of confidence, I guess you could say, or insecurity here and there. And then with ADHD, I think, I mean, I don't know, I find out new things all the time just through reading stuff and watching videos and seeing other people share stuff. I'm like, oh, that's an ADHD thing. It's not uh you're being a, an idiot about stuff type of thing. Because yeah, just find lots of different things that I guess you wouldn't expect to be difficult. I'd say to give a concrete answer, one of the most like day-to-day life things I find very difficult is sort of like task paralysis. I don't know if that's like the official wording for it, but yeah, just having like an inability to actually like do things, especially when I know I need to do things. It can be so bad to the fact of like living on a different continent. I've flown back home quite a few times, and I can put off packing until mere hours before I need to leave for the airport, and it's like, and I know the whole day. I know like I need to pack. I need to do this, and I just no matter how much I just scream at myself in my head to do it, I can't until I have reached a point where if I don't, then I'm not going to make my flight. So there's a terrifying, overwhelming extrinsic factor pushing me to actually complete the task. So stuff like that, and I mean that's I guess a bigger example because international travel. But when other day-to-day things, just like getting the dishes done or just straightening up, like putting laundry away. That's probably the one I'm the worst with. Just random tasks around the house are always pretty difficult with that. Um, and then I guess also on the topic of tasks, just kind of like so obviously task paralysis, like starting it, but also just kind of ending like things. So maybe that's more of like a projects thing rather than a task. But yeah, it can always it's less of like a distracted thing. I feel like it's more just I don't even know how to describe it sometimes. It just something comes up that I'm like, well, I can't complete the project now or whatever. I guess I convince myself that I can't do it because circumstances aren't perfect or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you did a good job of describing that.
Mm.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the challenges that you face in the workplace. Are there things that you find yourself compensating for, or things that you've learned to make adjustments for that impact you in the
Hmm.
workplace?
Yeah, I think fortunately with my current job, like I can't say enough about like the privileges of working in like academia, especially in Europe. I've heard, lots of like nightmare stories about academia in America, and I'm sure like it also exists in Europe as well, but obviously it's the much more relaxed vibe and everyone stops what they're doing and takes tea at 11. So that kind of more relaxed environment with a little bit more of an open-ended type of job. Like I don't have like an exact, get XYZ done today. I kind of have more grander, like need to accomplish this for the project as a whole. And so it kind of lets me apply myself kind of the way like my brain works, kind of in waves and things like that. Um, but if I like kind of harken back to like when I worked in environmental regulation for the state of Pennsylvania, that was more of like you're 9 to 5 and you got to complete these things. And that was definitely a pretty like stressful job in some cases, trying to um kind of by the schedule that I was forced to work, apply my brain by the hours I needed to do it rather than kind of when, inspiration hits, I guess you could say, or something. So, I'd have to go complete an inspection and then I worked in water quality, so I'd have to go inspect the facility for water quality related reasons. And then I'd have to sit there and do a big kind of mundane report about it. Um, and so trying to kind of like force myself to do that report, kind of just turn it on was always very difficult. Like I have people in my life that, like kind of very opposite end of the spectrum. Like they can sit there and they like whether it's studying, doing work, something, it's just like a switch. They can just flick it on and off. Whereas I feel like with ADHD, which becomes a challenge in certain workplaces, it's not like a switch. It's more of like it's like a tide, It's like, if high tide is high productivity, then like, that's when you get work done and tides don't come at the same time every day. So it's like up at 8 o'clock today, I feel like hyper fixating on this task and getting a lot done. And then it doesn't hit me till 6 p.m. the next day. So,
Yeah.
so trying to kind of reframe like kind of my brain to work in the kind of more stereotypical working hours, I guess would be one of the biggest kind of workplace challenges.
Yeah, definitely having that sort of
Mm,
rigid schedule. Well, and could you maybe talk a little bit about when you're sort of forced to
mm.
adhere to this rigid schedule? Does that lead to like a type of exhaustion when you're not feeling like you have the ability to complete things? Like, what does that kind of do long term? Like, do you find yourself having to work harder than maybe peers who don't have ADHD?
Yeah, I would say I feel like I definitely do. I could definitely feel more like I remember with that previous job, like I felt very mentally exhausted by the end of the day a lot of times. Even though I feel like I often would also come away with it feeling I didn't really accomplish anything, like maybe I didn't get the reports that I needed to get done and other stuff. And I was like, wow, I barely did anything today, but I feel like completely exhausted. And that was definitely something I also faced a lot, like in my undergrad as well. You kind of just like sit there and it becomes less about getting the task done and more of like just kind of this internal struggle of keeping yourself on the task. So it's like there's two things going on. Like your brain is trying to complete whatever you're being paid to do. Uh, and then also in your brain, it's like I don't know, there's like two people fighting at the steering wheel. Like one guy that's like, no, we don't need to do this right now. And the other guy saying like, no, we really, really need to do this right now, man. And so like it kind of just, yeah, it makes it this really convoluted process of trying to get a very simple task, just like writing out a paragraph of what you did in the field.
Yeah,
Uh,
it sounds like there's a
Very
whole other
exhausting.
level to it. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. Well, do you have any advice based on your experience for other individuals with learning disabilities in the
Mm.
workplace? Or I also want to add, this is a separate question too, but
Mm.
any recommendations maybe for employers too?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I'll go with the advice first. Is I
Yeah.
feel, and I definitely don't do this. Still, I'm definitely really bad about this, but trying not to like be too hard on oneself. I feel like is kind of the best advice I can say for this type of stuff because I mean I still think about like my previous job. I worked for the DEP, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for over 3.5 years, I think. And then to this day, I'm like, wow, I accomplished very little then. But then, I have plenty of people in my life that try to reassure me, like, no, you did a lot. And then also, even my supervisor said I did a great job. But then I was just like, they're just being nice. Like, convince yourself that like you did a bad job. And so I guess just trying to always remind oneself that you're probably doing better than you think you are, even if you feel like it's this overwhelming struggle and just daily battle just to get very simple tasks done. And you might feel insecure about it and feel like other people just do things much more simply, but then it what you think is barely getting anything done might be getting a lot done in other people's eyes. And also, I guess on that, to build off of that, like lots of other people struggle too. It's not, I guess I always assume that I'm having this really hard struggle of getting lots of stuff done, but then uh, with a lot of learning disabilities, I feel like it's kind of like you win some and lose some. So I might struggle with kind of doing the simple force yourself to get this thing done tedious task, but also I might fly through a different type of task that other people kind of struggle with in their own way. So like on a grand total, like a sum of like getting stuff done, I might be just as productive as other people. They might be having the same thoughts that I am about kind of like doubt and insecurity. So just kind of reminding yourself that um, you're doing better than you think you are, and not everybody else is doing much better than you. Like it's not just try not to compare, I guess would be a great way
Yeah.
to end that one.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
And then yeah, with the workplaces, that's actually kind of a recent kind of encounter at work that kind of perfectly lets me answer that is so my supervisor here at Trinity, she is a very, very accomplished researcher. She's in charge and involved in many projects here. So any words of praise from her are, make me feel really good. And I was kind of going through some work that I've been doing, just updating her on some of the things I've been working on. And without, I guess, getting too into the weeds of stuff of what I'm doing, I work for a scientific research project, and one kind of key tenet of science is that, you can't like have a conclusion in your mind and then aim your science towards that. That's bad science. But with the particular project I'm working on, we're kind of working towards we we're working towards creating some type of, I guess you could say, product, not actually like a commercial product, but we're something to provide in regards to forestry and sustainable like um, forestry and ecosystem services. And to do that, we need to know that we can actually, properly communicate and visualize the results. And so, being ADHD and being great at thinking of a project and then blasting through all the steps and then envisioning how it could end, I just did that first when I started working on stuff, and figured out a way how it could possibly be visualized without actually completing all the science in the middle. But in this particular case, unlike a lot of science, it was actually like a good thing to know, like, will this actually be worth it in the end? Like, or is this going to be too difficult of concept to show? So it's not worth it to actually pursue all the stuff in between. And like when I kind of mentioned that and said, yeah, I did a bit of an ADHD thing and sort of worked on the end of it before I actually did all the busy work. She actually complimented that. She said, like, I think it's really good to have sort of ADHD brains in science sometimes. So that was definitely um, something that really reassured me, and kind of to answering your question about like what to recommend to workplaces and stuff. I think seeing the value in different different types of brains, it's whether it is ADHD or OCD, like someone with like obsessive compulsive disorder, like sometimes that might be something drawing them back. But also what they're doing could also be something that could be kind of going over things to really make sure things are in place and in order. So I think that there's always benefits to how different brands operate, and for any employer or workplace, if you just kind of figure out how that brain could benefit you rather than how you have to accommodate it, I think would be a great bit of advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
So I have two questions for you yet before I let you go, but
Hmm.
what are some things that you wish more people understood about dysgraphia, and then the same thing for ADHD?
Hmm. Having still a lot to learn about dysgraphia myself, I don't know if there's too much, I guess, to answer about that. I guess the simplest would be it's not just bad handwriting. It's it's like, it's a misfire between the brain and the hand for actually completing. the process of handwriting. Um, One kind of just funny tangent on that is recently I've been showing lots of people. I guess apparently I was told that this is something related to dysgraphia, but I write every single letter like reverse. Everyone like starts, a certain letter up here and then goes down, or starts down here and goes up. I do everything the opposite way. And I've just been showing like colleagues and coworkers and stuff that, and they're all just like so confused and amazed by it. But then I guess to answer that question with ADHD, definitely this comes more from my undergrad stuff, but the people just hearing ADHD or ADD, just either of those, and just thinking like, oh, this person gets distracted really easily. I know that's like the very cliche basic answer to that, and you'd think people would understand by now. It's not just short attention span. In some cases, it can be the exact opposite. It can be you are so hyperfixated on one thing that you can't actually focus on anything else. Um, to the point where it's stressing you out and you're just like, why can't I stop thinking about this one thing? For me, a lot of times it's I love movies. I love watching different movies. If I also have a very visual memory. If I watch a movie I really like, I can just like not stop thinking about it. I can just be completely hyperfixated on it. I'll spend my free time Googling, like reading everything about the behind the scenes, learning about the different actors that are in it. Uh, to the point where people will be having like a conversation with me, and I'll just be thinking about, oh yeah, that one scene in the movie Sinners, that was really cool. And it's like, so it's not just some random fleeting distraction. It's I'm so focused on a different thing that I can't actually give you any of my focus right now. So I think that's definitely the biggest thing with ADHD. People just think it's like a dog and squirrels, where it's like, no, it's more, which I guess actually it is like a dog and squirrels, and the fact that dogs are so focused on squirrels, they don't have time to be paying attention to whatever you're doing.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
mm,
Well, and then before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask, is there
mhm.
anything that I didn't ask that maybe you wanted to talk about, or any notes to end on? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Um, hmm. I guess one thing just that just randomly came in my mind,
Yeah.
just as a bit of, I guess maybe this would further to advice or something is, um, I've found in personal life, like work life, just anything, especially with like ADHD, is I guess what's kind of reduced a lot of anxiety that can be born from that, is sort of just kind of leaning into it. And yeah, as long as it's not like hampering anything else. But I'll always get distracted with little like side projects, like kind of some type of artistic endeavor that might ever like not ever see the light of day or something. And I'll just sit there and I'll hyperfixate on it, and I'll just do lots of work towards some type of random project. And I think rather than trying to fight that and be like, no, I should pay attention, just I think people maybe should just lean into it more. Maybe one day you'll write a screenplay because that was your random side project you always just hyperfixated on and put way too much resources into. As long as it's not like negatively impacting like personal life or your work, just, kind of let your brain run wild and just just do the things that's just kind of let it feel at ease. It's kind of like cathartic, and then you'll be done it, and then you'll be like, ah, okay, that was a cool little thing I did, and then you'll stash it away, and then maybe some years later when you're moving, you'll pull out a painting that you did because you were just decided to hyperfixate on painting for a week, and you're like, wow, this was a really good painting that I did. So, you know, as long as it's
Yeah.
not negatively impacting you in another facet, just why not just let it go for a day,
Yeah. I like
hmm
that a lot. Well, and thanks so much for being on the
Yeah.
show and for sharing your experiences. I
hmm
love the advice that you shared. I think that was really great. So thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. It was great to talk about it.
Thank you for listening to the LDA podcast. To learn more about LDA and to get valuable resources and support, visit ldaamerica.org.